It's been a while since we talked legacy pieces for DC Dark Legion on the channel, so it's time to do another tier list review. I haven't made too many changes to the recommended legacy pieces, but there are a couple of things that did move up and down. We also have a new legacy item to talk about, which is Queen Hippolyta's staff. So let's quickly head over to the tier list and take a look. If you're new to the game, you can see that we have this set up the same way that my tier list for champions is set up. We've got a section for our damage dealers. We have a section for our tanks and warriors. And then we have a spot for supports. Now, before we talk about a couple of the legacy items that have changed, I do want to plug my website. So you can go over to the website, and we've got a couple of things that we've included. So if you've never been here before, it's basically a sortable grid of all the legacy pieces that are in the game. We do still need to add Queen Hippolyta's staff, and I've also noticed that there are a couple of rankings here that are incorrect from the last time we did the tier list, so I'll definitely be updating that in the coming days. But you can come in here and you can see if you have a specific legacy item that you're thinking about using. We've tried to provide the type of champion that's going to be using that legacy piece, the ranking that we give for the legacy piece, you know, kind of whether you should be using it or not, and then who is good to use that legacy item as well. You can also view that information from a champion's landing page on the site. I'll leave that to you to go in and explore a little bit further and see what's available there for you. But I'm hoping that people have been able to get some benefit out of going to the site and using the sortable list and seeing the information that's there. If you do have any feedback for the site, kind of what you want to see, it is in active development right now. We're trying to add as much as we can, but we do have limited time and resources to work on this, so it's kind of a little long. Moving back over to the tier list, and this is going to be a fairly short video, all things considered. You can see that we've got a couple of legacies that have moved around, and mainly this is happening within the Guardian and Warrior section. So we did move the Gabriel horn down to B tier, and this was really more just because I feel like, having had plenty of time to play Supergirl as one of my main champions for pretty much every game mode, I do think that her legacy piece deserves a little bit more credit for why she's able to do what she's able to do. You know, to be honest, the more I think about it, I actually think this is probably going to end up in S tier when all things are considered. If you look at what Ral's Ascension is able to do, it's going to increase Supergirl's attack by a significant amount just right off the rip. And then every time she casts her ultimate, she's going to be doing more and more AoE damage over time. So this is a very significant tool in your kit to increase how much damage that Supergirl is able to do over time. Obviously, this isn't going to come into play as much in PvP, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have it in S tier, because PvP is a heavy focus for this game, as you know. But I do think that in PvE game modes, this is going to be incredibly useful, especially in Combat Cycle, but also in the Realm of Fate and just general training simulator. You know, if we take a look at Gabriel Horn, it's a quite nice and very useful tank legacy item, but there are some limitations to it. For example, obviously the energy gain bonus is one of the positives of the legacy piece, and also the additional HP that you're going to be getting. But the attack bonus that you're getting with the Gabriel Horn is only applicable in the first 20 seconds of battle. Now, in a meta brawl battle, that's probably all the time you're going to need to figure out whether you're going to win the match, at least if it's a very, offense heavy opponent that you're facing. But the fact that that goes away and can't be activated or used again for the remainder of the battle, it does take a little bit away. If you have an opponent who's able to withstand that initial volley from you, then it's just going to diminish the usefulness of the horn. So again, it's still a really valuable legacy piece for your account, and it's obviously going to be something that a lot of people will use early on in their playthrough. But over time, as you are able to acquire more and more of these limited legacy items, you're definitely going to be using the Gabriel horn less on your tanks. Moving back over to the tier list, you can see that Queen Hippolyta's Scepter has debuted at S tier. I've been using Queen Hippolyta quite extensively. You've seen my video on what she's capable of doing at the high tiers of Meta Brawl, and I've just found that she's really, really useful in pretty much everything except for combat cycle. I'm sure there's probably some way that you could utilize her um, right now and she would be helpful there. But until we have full Amazon teams that are floating around out there, I highly doubt she'll be that useful in combat cycle. She just doesn't put out any damage herself. So unless you're swapping out a healer and trying to use her instead, probably not worth using her there. But the Scepter is incredibly useful for pretty much every other aspect of the game. If we switch over and take a look at the Scepter itself, it's going to provide crit resistance, which is going to be pretty nice for Queen Hippolyta because you need to keep her alive. You don't want anyone trying to focus fire her down. You're getting that HP. And then for anyone who equips this legacy item, not just Queen Hippolyta, it's going to increase their physical defense by a percentage. And then after the wearer casts their ultimate, all other allies will gain a decent amount of energy. So this is something that probably is going to get used on other champions as well, probably other tank champions. Leave a comment down below if you're using the Royal Scepter on anyone other than Queen Hippolyta, especially for the folks who haven't been able to draw her yet. I know some people like to buy the legacy items and throw them on champions that they already have. I've heard a couple of rumblings of maybe this being viable on other champions, but let me know what your experience is. And then, of course, we have the showstopper for Queen Hippolyta herself, which is that at the start of every battle, she's going to gain some energy. And then every time she casts her ultimate, she'll restore a percentage of her max HP over time. So it's a heal over time. And we talked in the PvP video that I did featuring Arcalux battles that this is a huge difference maker in a lot of PvP comps, especially when you're trying to beat Legion of Doom. It's incredibly important that she takes her ultimate before anyone does anything else. And so if you have her at 5 yellow stars and you have this legacy item at 0 stars, you should be able to take the first turn. If not, it's going to be really close. Obviously, if you have her at 5 red stars, you're definitely going to be able to take that first turn. And it's just an incredibly powerful legacy piece, especially when used on Queen Hippolyta. Not much else has changed on the legacy piece tier list for September. I've got my eye on a couple of the other legacy pieces. Obviously, Green Lantern's legacy piece is down in B tier. That one's probably going to be adjusted. We also have the 2 new Al Ghul champions that are their legacy pieces are in B tier as well. Probably going to be making some moves on those. Actually, Ra's al Ghul's is probably going to move up. We'll see what happens. The other thing that I'll point out before we go today is I've talked about this a little bit with my main tier list, but looking at some ways to maybe go away from this SABCD format for some of these tier lists. And definitely with the legacy piece tier list, we're going to figure out a way to move away from that. So be on the lookout for the next iteration of this tier list. We're going to swap away from that. And it's really going to be more of, kind of a, you must use this legacy item, or it's a situational use for just Meta Brawl, or for, we'll figure out exactly how we're going to case it. But I know some other folks, I think Tavoka has made some adjustments to his legacy tier list in a similar manner. We actually talked about this offline. So be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be a better way to kind of show you what's good, what's bad, what to use, what not to use than this current format, because it's a little bit confusing actually, or at least daunting to look at this and see all these legacy items that you're having to kind of sift through. I think it'll be a little bit easier to kind of like give you tiers that are a little bit more understandable. That's going to wrap things up for this video. If you haven't already done so, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. You'll get notified anytime I have new DC Dark Legion content for you. And if not, I hope to see you on the next video.